So I'm recording for the sake of accuracy in minutes, starting now. And I will do a roll call from the list that I'm working from. And so if I miss anybody, please, because they seem to shift around a bunch. If I miss anybody at the end, please do speak up. So Pat Frost, is Carol going to be with Carol?
No, she's doing burn piles.
Burn piles, okay. Diana and Terry Sheen?
Yes.
Yes.
Sally, I assume that's Aldinger?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Brian Taylor?
Brian, Joe, and D.
Oh, Brian, Joe, and D, okay. Jerry Cousins?
Yes.
WRTC, I assume that's Nick?
Yeah, that's Nick. Hello.
Hi, Nick. Larry Glass?
I'm here.
Arnold Whitridge?
Here.
Ross and Susan Molyneux?
We are.
How do you make
Christine
it?
Jordan? Christine Jordan? Well, she's on the call. Joseph and Susan Bauer?
Here.
Here.
Tom Waltz?
Yes, I'm here.
Osley Welsh?
Here.
Chris Cole?
Here.
Chris Losi?
Sorry, trying trouble with the Zoom here.
Hi, Chris.
Hi.
Cindy Winter?
Oh, Cindy.
It's me, Larry. I'm here.
Oh, Larry. Gotcha.
Hi, Larry.
Hi, Larry.
Hi, guys.
Let's see. Terry Otto?
Here.
Keith Greenwood?
Yeah, Keith's here.
Kent Bloomer?
Hi, here.
Oh boy, they're getting all scrambly. Leanne Colburn?
I'm here.
Scott Russell?
Yeah, hi, Kelly.
Hi, Scott. Paul Hooser?
Here.
Hi, Paul. Tara Jones?
Good morning, everyone. I'm here.
Morning.
Ted MacArthur?
Hey, good morning. I'm here.
Hi, Ted. Everything got scrambled up. Kristen Lark?
Good morning.
Morning, Kristen. Dylan Sheedy?
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning, Dylan. Dan Osman?
Good morning. I'm here.
Tom Waltz?
Yeah, my twin's here too.
Okay.
He was already here.
And I think that's everyone. If I missed your name, please announce yourself. I think we're good to go, Pat.
Hey, well, so this was the meeting, I want to thank everybody for being able to make another meeting with very short notice, and actually, and also a lot of a fairly stiff homework requirement with the report that came out at the same time. So this was called by, or asked for by Chris, Losi. So I don't know if Chris wants to kind of take the lead, starting it off. I would just remind the agency folks again that, while this is a meeting of the full collaborative, it isn't set up in a way to facilitate us making recommendations to the Board of Supervisors necessarily. So that's our usual process for making recommendations to you all. So you're gonna have to take this a little bit as individuals making their own comments. Sorry about the dogs. Go ahead.
You're on mute, look, Chris.
There we go. I'm used to Teams. That's what we use normally, so sorry about that. So thanks everybody for joining us. And yes, I had originally asked for this meeting. Originally, actually, I was hoping to do a field visit, but with COVID and the precept that we had in the area and condition of the roads, I thought it better that we didn't take 20 people out into the woods right now. So with that, I was thinking we could have like a kind of a virtual field visit, and then it became clear that really the rapid assessment that Tara and others were putting together was really an important topic that I think that we still need some time to talk about. And so over time, then I think the purpose changed a little bit. And given that we've got the holidays coming up, a lot of us are taking time off. We have what they call use or lose, where if you don't take your time off at the end of the year, then you just don't get it. And with the fires and everything else, a lot of us really need to take some time off for a lot of reasons. So my hope really was that in this meeting, we could talk about the rapid assessment. I just agreed to talk a little bit about, an overview of the rapid assessment and give a thumbnail sketch of that. And then there'd be an opportunity for you folks to ask questions and make recommendations. And for us to get an idea of what you feel are the highest priorities, what you feel are the most important things to look at, to treat. And so that's, I think, how the meeting's evolved a little bit. And I think if you're all right with it, I think it'd be good if we could just start out with an overview of the rapid assessment.
If anybody needs me to share a screen, we can certainly, beyond this document that I have up, if you guys need that, just let me know and we can accommodate that.
So we can't move the scroll? We can't scroll on our own?
Yeah, that's correct. Not without having pulled up in the email that I sent earlier this week, this document was attached, so you should be able to pull it up on your own computers.
I was trying to get to the table.
If it's all right, I'd like to go ahead and this is Tara Jones, and I was tasked by the 3-4 supervisors to kind of lead the team to go through this this assessment. And I wanted to get back with all of you and kind of give you the finished product and show you what we had come up with, and kind of walk you through where to find some things and what we did and how the document is built, and go through a couple of the tables so that you would have all the information that you needed. And then, as we work through this, give you kind of an idea of what comes next, for the forest, and where who you'll be talking to next to give some more feedback to. So if it's okay, I'd like to just kind of ask Kelly to bring up the document, and I don't want to go through it word for word, but just kind of let you know how it's kind of structured, and give you some of that big picture look at it, and then look at a couple of the tables, and kind of just work through the document really quickly, if that's okay with all of you.
I've got it set to share, Tara. Do you want to go ahead and share your own screen, or would you rather me run that?
I would rather you do it.
Very well.
The Forest Service is Zoom challenged at times.
Okay,
So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
no worries. So just let me know what you need me to do here.
Yep. Okay. So, so in the introduction, this kind of walks you through, the August fire was a 1 million acre fire, the biggest in California. It burned up a lot of acres on the Shasta Trinity, the Mendocino, and the Six Rivers. So the forest supervisors recognized that this was a big ask for any one forest to kind of evaluate. So they asked us to come together and do the rapid assessment. With the intent that there's obviously going to be more work than we can accomplish on our own. But we wanted to identify, look at the work through a number of different lenses and see where those priorities kind of fell out after looking at it through all of those different lenses. So one thing to notice is that while in the second paragraph, you see that the August fire was 1 million acres, but that and that's obviously a huge fire. But in the last 5 years, the poor Mendocino has burned over 903,000 acres alone. The Six Rivers has burned over 308,000 acres, and the Shasta Trinity has been affected by fire on more than 413,000 acres. That's just in the last 5 years. So the August restoration obviously takes on a little different look when you put it in context with those other fires over the last few years, and the need for restoration is just kind of ramped up that much more. I want to bring your attention to the blue link there. That link will take you to a public webpage that's housed on the Mendocino National Forest. However, there's a link to it on the Six Rivers National Forest webpage, public webpage, as well as the Shasta Trinity public webpage. When you go to that webpage, that's where you'll find the maps associated with this document. So you'll find one that shows the special areas of concern. It'll show the focus areas. I believe the ravage map is in there, and then there's a map specific to focus areas 16 and 17, which are roads and infrastructure. But working through the document, the next piece you'll see there is the evaluation criteria for resources. So we asked these groups to take a look at the August fire footprint and sort of through their lens, find areas that were, that made sense to go in and kind of prioritize for restoration. Some folks interpreted that as, say, fuels. Fuels said, well, these areas are high. It's a high priority for restoration because it was in the WUI, or the treatments could be along a ridge line to put in a strategic fuel break. Things like that would make it rise to the top for fuels. Forestry was, was the ability to reforest the ground. Is it good site? Does it, what's the logging system there? If we're going to reforest, we want to harvest the trees there so that we can clear the ground and prep it and get some trees back in the ground. And then wildlife, we would be looking at impacts to not just the northern spotted owl. Of course, that was a big one, but also some opportunities associated with wild turkeys, for instance. Botany was plants of special concern. Hydrology was where we may have some legacy sites and be in need of some restoration work. Geology would have been about unstable ground, areas that they really felt that we should look at to reforest to kind of bring some of that stability that you get with those nice deep-rooted trees. Heritage was areas that may be of special concern to the tribes, as well as areas that are historically or prehistorically significant that we really want to make sure that we protect and we maintain that integrity. And fisheries, of course, would be a habitat. We want to make sure that we're maintaining that critical habitat, especially for the coho. So moving down the focus areas through that. Oh, so you'll find there's a much bigger write-up explaining what each of these people looked at in appendix number 1. You can see that reference right there. So going to focus areas, if you come down to this table, and there's a write-up for each of these focus areas from all of those resources in appendix 2. But in this table, you'll see, let's take the Forest Glen. That would be an area that would be really important to all of you. In timber, that was a high priority for treatment. Fuels felt it was a high priority for treatment. Heritage said, hey, this is a good area, but there's a lot of watch outs here. There are a lot of historic and prehistoric significance here. So we have to be careful that we protect those heritage areas through any treatment we may do. Wildlife said, there's not as big of an impact to wildlife here, sometimes because of the severity of the fire, that some of that critical habitat, maybe no longer wasn't as critical, depending on how the new baseline information comes out. Fisheries said, hey, this area is kind of, it'd be like the yellow light, right? It's moderate. There's some concerns here. We want to make sure that we're doing some restoration, that we're not getting any sedimentation, that we're protecting the habitat. Hydrology said, hey, this area is really important for us to get some restoration work done. There's some work that needs to be done in here. And in some cases for hydrology, we've already got the watershed analysis done. But that's what hydrology is saying. Hey, there's really important work to do here to make sure that we're protecting those stream courses. And geology, for instance, in this area, I can tell you there's an area that's unstable, not far from the rec residences. That there's a little bit of some instability going there. And they said, hey, yeah, if we can stay off of that area, treat around it so that we can start to, give that soil something to grab onto, this would be a good spot. And then obviously yourselves and many others thought that the Forest Glen area was a really important area to treat. So it became a high priority for many of the partners that we discussed it with. So I only wanted to walk you through that one, just to kind of walk you through what they were looking at. And again, you would find that in Appendix 1, what they were considering. And then in Appendix 2, you can read their specific write-up for that focus area. So if it's okay, I'll finish going through the document and then we'll come back if you have any questions about the document. Section 4 was areas of special concern. So these are areas that, and if you scroll down, you can see, hey, not only do we have these focus areas where based on ravage data, based on burn severity, but we also have some things we really want to make sure that we're doing. We want to make sure we're getting strategic fuel breaks and prescription fire back on the landscape, that when we restore the landscape, we put it back into a condition that it can handle prescribed fire, and that we have fuel breaks that'll protect these communities. Oak woodlands, we talked about that a little bit. That's a good example. So if we're restoring oak woodland habitat, that probably wouldn't be that important from a timber standpoint, because we're not really looking at, you're not going to reforest it unless maybe you put some oak in the ground. But from a fuel standpoint, that oak woodlands makes a nice fuel break. And heritage wasn't as, those areas aren't always as important to heritage. But if there are any sites, obviously, or cultural areas, we would protect them. And wildlife said, hey, this is important to us actually, because if we improve those oak woodlands, that creates some really good habitat for wild turkeys, for instance. And fisheries thought, well, that's not really, generally it's not very close to any fish bearing streams, so they weren't concerned. Hydrology had a similar viewpoint. Geology, you'd have to read that one. I can't paraphrase his off the top of my head. And the partners thought that, there are a number of partners, Wild Turkey Federation, for example, that thought, hey, that's a really good place to do some work. So that example kind of tells you the context, right? We didn't just look at it from a timber standpoint. We looked at it for restoration. And that would be a really good, if you did some oak woodlands restoration work, it would then make a really nice fuel break. It would provide that habitat. It would provide an opportunity to work with partners. So that's kind of how that one plays out. So slope stability, obviously we have a lot of fire and a lot of geology concerns across the landscape that we need to be looking at to protect the water quality and all of those other things, especially on the roof side of things. Watershed restoration is always an area of special concern. And then critical habitat, not only for the habitat we lost, but also trying to find ways to protect what we have left. So those were things we wanted to look at. And in addition to, reforestation, you look at that 1 million acres, nearly 900,000 acres burned on the Mendocino, that makes reforestation a little bit higher priority, most likely, to try to get some green trees, get a head start and get some of that habitat started early. So that's kind of what those are. Those are not the only ones. Those are just the ones that came up. So that kind of, and then each of these areas was rated, and there's a appendix 3 addresses the areas of special concern. Partnerships just talk about, all the people we reached out to. We reached out to, LeJean was really busy working with a lot of partners, from Wild Turkey to the McConnell Foundation to the collaborative to a whole bunch of partners in between. Just an unbelievable amount of work was done in that arena. Can you scroll down a little bit more, Kelly, please? So mostly what we heard from the partners was they wanted us to do something on the ground. You'll see by and large organizations were contacted, expressed an interest in working with us on projects and wanted to help. So that was really nice to hear, because we know on 1 million acres that we just can't do it alone. We're going to need some partners to come up and to help us get all of this really important work done. So if you scroll down some more, many of the partners that we reached out to wanted to see us salvage some burnt trees and get some trees in the ground. A lot of them were really concerned about the water quality. Some were concerned about dead trees, for instance, falling into Elk Creek and compromising their bridge, which is the link to each side of their town. So things that we've just never really had to consider as much before, certainly are concerns for everyone on the lands out on the forest. So Forest Service roads, there was a lot of concern about that, as well as recreation activities and opportunities. We know how important recreation is to Trinity County, as well as this year with COVID, it was critically important to all of the counties. It brought folks out to enjoy their national forests and managed to keep some revenue coming into the county. So we know those are important to get restored as well. And if you looked on the focus areas, as I said, area number 16 was roads, 17 was infrastructure, and the trailheads and the campgrounds, that's what we're thinking about for infrastructure. We also have some bridges that were affected by the fire. Okay, if you want to scroll down a little bit more, please. Public participation. So we've developed a communication plan. We will be reaching out and having some, inviting the public to get more involved with what we're doing. We have this website. We'll be putting things on Facebook and trying to get as much public input to these potential projects as we can, realizing that these communities recreate on the national forest, and they get their firewood in the national forest. They hunt on the national forest. So we want to make sure that the public gets a chance to weigh into what and where we go do some restoration work. Environmental compliance gives you some different options for getting the NEPA work done. It's kind of wide open, and that'll be up, of course, to the forest supervisors to kind of figure out which direction they want to go. None of us is overly staffed and brimming at the seams with people to take care of this, but the thought is, if we're strategic and we're smart about how we put our teams together, we don't necessarily limit participation on ID team to just one forest. That may increase our capacity to take on more planning and to get more done. There's focused EA is an opportunity in there, and as well as some CE categories that may be appropriate. If you want to scroll down some more. We also, the thought is, with having all of these, it's really clear in this document that there are more opportunities than we could possibly achieve. But it does give us, by having them all laid out, it gives us the ability to work with the region, to work with our partners, to work in a bigger picture than just to work in the North Zone, to reach out outside of the forest boundaries, and even outside of the 3 forest boundaries, to see if we can get some help to get some planning done or to implement some of this really important work. So if you scroll down a little bit more.
Tara, this is Tom Waltz. Hey, rather than focus so much on going page by page through this thing, is there a way we can focus on the 4 or 5 key questions, issues? Like one is the type of environmental compliance you're going to do. 2 is where you're going to do it. And then 3, how you're going to do it. And can we focus on that? Because it's going to take forever if we page through this thing.
Yeah, no, sir. This was absolutely, Tom. This was the last page, actually. And that's why the next steps are, after this is all just appendix stuff. So this was the last page I wanted to go through with all of you. And it's, it just says that there's a lot to be done. There's much more to come, and that we need to start setting those priorities and get going on it. So the thought was the rapid assessment kind of laid clear, these are the pathways we can take. We provided you with all of that information. And so you're exactly right. The next questions are exactly the ones you asked. So that's what I want to do, is just kind of walk you through the structure of the document, so everyone kind of understood how it worked, show you where to find the maps, explain the table to you, the tables to you, and the rankings by the specialist. And that was what I had for you. So you asked some very good questions, and I'm here to go ahead and ask them again. And Tom, and I'm writing them down with you.
So Tara and Kelly, maybe just scroll down and quickly, I don't think there's much to show in Appendix 1, but if you could just show one example in Appendix 2 of one of those focus areas and the kind of information that is there about those, the more detailed information about each of those, and then I think that wraps it up. But you're exactly right, Tom. We just wanted to provide this overview so that it's kind of a roadmap to the product, so people can. But this is an example of that. Back to you, Tara.
Okay, thanks, Scott. So yeah, here's the Forest Glen area. It kind of walks you through of that area, how much in the LSR burned very low, moderate, or severe. It walks you through the acres and gives you kind of those grand totals. So this is kind of that, the in-depth look into focus area 1. We're not down breaking it into units. This is just kind of, these are the things that we were looking at. These are the things that were considered. And as you scroll down, you'll see each resource kind of weighed in on focus area 1. So that's kind of how the document works. But Tom, so that was, were there any questions about how this is structured? And again, that link will take you, it's a Mendocino public web page, but it is for all 3 forests, and there will be a link on each web page to get you to the maps. And I think we verified before the meeting that they're up and running and that you can get there and open them up. That just seemed to make the most sense because it's a big document and the maps take a lot to kind of mail out to everybody.
Yeah, Tara, this is Tom Waltz. The point I was trying to make is that for our purposes, the collaborative anyway, we have to be able to make a recommendation at our January meeting to the Board of Supervisors. And the 3 focus areas that I think we're going to try and look at is what we're going to recommend in terms of the environmental documentation, whether we want to say EA or CEs. The second thing is where we believe that work should be focused or jumped on. And then third is how much can be done. And obviously you'll answer those questions, but I think the maps definitely help. I pulled up the map showing the focus areas with the burn severity. And I mean, that jumps out right along, I think helps answer a lot of the questions as to where you should go to work. And then secondly, whether you do CEs or EAs, we have talked with our collaborative fuel break work group that our emphasis wants to be trying to stay with along the roads, along high priority areas, campgrounds, private property. We're going to propose to the full collaborative some little bit language change, but staying fairly close to that white paper. But the main thing is to get started. And I would think that rather than, doing all this addressing as to how we're going to do this, I'd already be putting in some CEs, the ones that are obvious, the ones that you could be working on right now, where you could be producing some good work along roads, for example. There should be a CE at Forest Glen on 1S26. That should be in progress already. You've got power lines there, you've got cabins, you've got a trailhead road. There should be a CE being worked on right now. So those are the types of things I think we as a collaborative want the Forest Service to know about and hear about.
This is Joseph. If I can jump in there, it might be helpful if Scott or Chris could tell us what is allowed under a road maintenance CE, and is that something that's in place already that would allow you to go to work along the roadsides? It seems like that might be an opportunity to do some work really quickly. What is the requirements under a road maintenance CE?
Yeah, so I can answer that. So, under the car fire, we use the road maintenance CE category to go ahead and remove hazard trees to the road, and we were successful there. The Mendocino used a similar approach and was challenged in court and lost that, and so we're doing some work to evaluate kind of what does feel appropriate there, and so you're right. There's an opportunity there using that category, but we're also recognizing that there's some potential risk given that court case on the Mendocino.
Others, any thoughts or comments on this?
Pat, this is Keith.
Well,
go ahead, Keith.
Yeah. So
and then Arnold.
Yeah, I understand Tom's point, and I think it's valid to get working, but I do want to compliment your folks on putting together a sense of priorities across multiple forests and focus areas so that you can actually allocate resources of personnel and the hierarchy for getting things done. So I think it allows you to have a little more focus. So I like the process that you've taken thus far, and I think it gives us some good areas to concentrate on for actually getting something done. So I appreciate you, Scott, and Tara and your team.
Thanks, Keith. So Arnold, did you have something you were going to say? I couldn't tell.
No.
Okay, Tom.
Yeah, the point I was going to make under the roadside CE, is that still where you can do 1 tree length below the road and 2 tree lengths above the road? Is that what you did in the car fire? Because that seems to make a lot of sense to me.
So
I believe that was a tree, 1.5 tree lengths, Tom.
The Ninth Circuit specifically rejected the idea that a tree that would not directly hit the road. The Ninth Circuit specifically addressed the idea of trees that were further than 1 tree length from the road. And under the facts on the Mendocino, they ruled that that was not maintenance. So, we disagree strongly with that, but that's now Ninth Circuit precedent. And so that's a challenge in trying to, that's certainly a challenge in trying to do roadside work that would, not only fully abate the hazard, but also, be the kind of project that would likely succeed from the perspective of, getting a timber sale in there, because the more easy it is to get a timber sale in there, the more easy it is to do the work. I think we all recognize that. And so when you have a lot of these constraints, that makes it harder. And the Ninth Circuit specifically said that they didn't like the idea that roads were being, maintained through timber sales, which is kind of like, well, I mean, but that's, that's where the Ninth Circuit was. So I just, that is a reality that we have to deal with, depending on how we want to deal with these roadside hazards.
Anyone else? Any other thoughts?
Well, this is Joseph again. I just, after seeing what happened on Shasta Trinity after the 2015 fires, where, an awful lot of money, maybe $2 million was spent doing NEPA work that was way too late to actually accomplish its goals of getting the trees out of there. So once again, I'm just going to say, let's not bite off more than you can chew. This reforestation can go on for a long time, but if you're going to get any value out of timber, you probably need to do it pretty darn quick. And, it didn't work to do extensive NEPA compliance last time, and it probably won't this time. So you're probably going to have to use CEs however you can manage to use them, and focus on getting out what you absolutely have to get out, and that is the hazard trees along the roads and campgrounds and other infrastructure. And it's, doubtful that you can accomplish more than that, because that's hundreds of miles of road. So anyway, my 2 cents worth.
So that, Joseph, is kind of going to the batch or not batch kind of question, right?
Yeah, we can't give legal advice to the Forest Service. They've got to figure out what is legally possible for them to do and do that.
Scott.
Yeah, so my response to that, Joseph, is I hope that what we did in 2018 following those large fires demonstrated that we learned those lessons too. And it felt like to me that we were very successful and timely in that exercise. And so, yeah, you can keep going back to 2015. I'd like to point to 2018 as a demonstration that we learned that lesson as well.
Yeah, and this is Ted. I just want to jump in real quick and something to consider, at least for you to be aware of, is I don't think we have to pick one specific approach. I think CEs are a good option. I think it's reasonable to expect that we'll probably do one or two of those. The other thing is when we're talking a focused EA, that helps us navigate being able to treat things that aren't constrained by some of the CE categories, and there's some accommodations that we can ask for when we're doing an EA. For example, if this group was very supportive of certain actions, we could do a focused EA where we're only doing one alternative. We're not doing multiple alternatives. We're shortening some time frames for public involvement because we have support of a group like this, and the likelihood of litigation is reduced because it's a broad support of the actions we're proposing to take. So if we had something like that where you help us identify what the priorities are, what the most important work is for us to get done, and you're absolutely right. Whatever decisions we make, we need those decisions made this spring so we can start operating late spring, early summer, and that really narrows what we can take on. So just things to consider, and I think we could be successful in doing something really focused where we're doing one EA with a team, and then we have other teams, since there's multiple forests working on CEs that are coordinated but independent. Just some food for thought.
Anybody else?
Can I say something? This is Anjali.
Yes.
So looking at this document, I noticed that under the CE, multiple CEs option, it says that the analysis time and documentation is similar for a CE and an EA. And if that's the case, it doesn't seem like trying to focus more on CEs gives a lot of benefit because they are more limited in the areas that you can treat with a CE. So that kind of makes it seem to me that an EA would be sort of a better option all around. And then my other question is, it seems like in terms of the staffing strategies, seems like that's going to be really critical for the timeline. And option 3 is requesting funding to contract out, so doing an EA. And I'm just wondering how likely it seems that that it says that you would need to request funding to be able to do that. And I'm wondering how likely it is that you would be able to get funding, the forest would be able to get funding to contract that out.
Joseph, did you have something?
No.
Okay. Arnold?
No.
No? Okay. Does anybody want to respond to Osley?
Yeah, Ted, do you want to take that one, or Chris, or who would like that one?
I'll jump in.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, no, I think, like I said, I think a multi-pronged approach. I think the likelihood of us getting funding to do, whether it's a contractor or work through some agreements to get some help from outside the agency, I think that's highly likely. I think that's going to be part of our strategy, no matter which approach we have. So we'll balance what work we can do internally with our staff and what work we can reach out through contracts or agreement to augment. I think we have a lot of support from the region. It's really important, both here locally for the 3 forests, but for the North Zone and for the region for us to be successful. So I think, you know, we'll get some and we'll be able to work in that. So yeah, long-winded way of saying, yeah, we're gonna look at that and likely that will be part of our strategy.
So I wanted to note there are a couple of messages on the chat. Carol Spinos from 6 Rivers said 6 Rivers has a Rhodes Mountain CE in place, but limits extent of hazard tree removal. And then Nick, you have a fairly long chat message. Do you want to just kind of let everybody know what you're thinking? Are you there, Nick? No, so Nick is saying that he liked Ted's recommendation a lot. I think focusing on 1 to 2 CEs on each forest and 1 focused EA each that can allow more expansive treatments in the most strategic areas where we need to get beyond the roadside. That hedges the risks of EAs while still trying to ensure that some of the CEs and the essential roadside work can move ahead independently. So anybody else? Just a lot to absorb in such a short time. So I realize people are probably still trying to get their heads around the rapid assessment. So any other comments or thoughts?
This is Jerry, and I wanted to just kind of ask some questions about the requested funding for outside NEPA work. You know, we struggled with that over the years to try and get projects moved through the forest because they didn't have local resources. And I know this fire is probably precipitating lots more money, maybe precipitating lots more money available. But then when it comes back to the forest, we had conversations with Scott about the difficult or the extensive review of the outside work being reviewed by the Forest Service of the outside work being done, which also then ate up lots and lots of time. So I wonder if any of the forest supervisors could discuss any of those issues.
I'll let you take this one, Scott.
I think our conversation was around the idea that we need to avoid extensive review that adds time.
Absolutely.
You know, that we need to get good contractors and they do great work. There's also the option of agreements in terms of bringing in additional capacity. I mean, that's a conversation we've been having, you know, since I got here around how do we develop that capacity for additional help in NEPA outside of the agency. And so, you know, the agreement we put in place with the Watershed Center for them to take on the NEPA associated with the Bowerman fuel break is an example of where we found that funding and we put that agreement in place. And so, you know, we're working to move that way. This, like you say, is another opportunity. We just need to manage it right and not let it devolve into, you know, us thinking we have to redo the work somebody else did. So thanks for pointing that out.
So Scott or Ted, so what is the, you know, what are the processes for you to secure additional funding for getting this work done, whether it's internal or external?
So internally, I'll talk about that first. So, you know, as we've been talking about working as part of the North Zone, that would be our first stop, where we would develop a proposal from the three forests about how much we take on. You know, we're wanting to do that very quickly. And then we would go to the zone and we would talk about our zone allocations of funds and our zone capacity in terms of personnel. I would tell you that a number of the other forest supervisors in the Northern California zone have already indicated that they're willing to help with personnel on these priorities. And so we'll be having that conversation as a North Zone and looking to secure funding and potentially personnel there first. And then after we've done that, then our next step would be the region, obviously, in terms of if there were additional needs for funding and support in terms of resources. So we've got a little work ahead of us to package something and solicit some help from both the zone and the region. And then, you know, the funding that we would secure would be used to look both internally and at opportunities to work with partners or with contractors to get some of this done. So
Scott, so from a timing point of view, if there were actions taken by this collaborative the third Friday of January, are those timely for you? Provide support?
You know, we're going to be working hard on trying to figure out where to go. We're hoping to have the broad outlines of a plan before then, be in these conversations. But I think if you guys were willing to signal kind of what recommendation you had supported it as a collaborative and were taking to the Board of Supervisors, that might be helpful, you know, as a little precursor there. But yeah, I think that timing would work. It feels like it's maybe a week late, but yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
This is Jerry.
Go ahead, Jerry.
I was wondering if you're in conversation, Scott, and already and in the process of making decisions, if you could keep the collaborative abreast of those decisions at the January meeting, then we could be a lot more concrete in our deliberations and in our recommendations.
Yeah, a good point, and I hope this engagement we've done throughout this August demonstrates our commitment to keeping you guys in the loop on this in terms of as we move along, and we'll continue to do that. And so what I would tell you is that the district rangers are busy working with their staffs and formulating their thoughts. We're also working as forests to figure out how we support this work kind of collectively as forests. And then after the first of the year is when we'll be coming back together as the three forests and figuring out kind of what our proposal is, you know, around moving forward and how we structure that. That's going to be a work in progress to do that first couple of weeks of January. And so I think the timing on your recommendations are good. You know, I'm not hearing anything on this call that we're also not thinking about as well. You know, we all know how urgent timing is on this. We all know how urgent taking a bite of this that we can accomplish successfully and not trying to take on too much. We all know that you know, CEs provide us that best opportunity. But I will tell you that we are thinking around focused EAs where we have some larger area needs. You know, maybe Chris, you could talk a little bit about what you and your staff are thinking.
Just before Chris jumps in, Scott, if you could encourage the district people to maintain that communication line of updates, probably through Kelly Sheehan, and then he can distribute it to the larger collaborative again. So we're just that much more ahead of the game when we have our January meeting.
Hello?
Diana?
Hello, Diana Sheen. I'm sorry I jumped in here. I wasn't sure if I was even, I get the sound, but anyway. So I want a little bit of confirmation on the cruise that you spoke of before. And that, does that mean like the local crew personnel from RCD and so that, you know, High and Palm, all those different places, that the guys, the crews will be working. I mean, it's important at this time with COVID that people get back to work. And I was hoping that the crews will be getting back to work. Thank you. Anybody?
Well, I can respond to that quickly, and
where are the crews coming from?
So you know, we'll obviously be looking to work with our partners within Trinity County to figure out how much of this work that they can take on. I mean, as Kelly talked about on the last meeting, you know, the Watershed Center and the RCD both have the capacity to help in a big way, and we're in conversations about that.
Okay, thank you. I am just concerned about our crew population. Thank you.
Understood. So Scott asked me to talk a little bit about areas that we're looking in. And, you know, when I think about, we're trying really hard to think about the whole, you know, to think about the fire recovery holistically. We have some great specialists across a lot of different areas, and we've had numerous discussions with them. I've had numerous discussions with specialists across the west side of the forest about, you know, what needs there are. And I think the two main concepts that come out is, well, of course, hazard, but when you're talking, you know, hazardous fuels and reforestation, right? And to do good hazardous fuel reduction, you need to deal with the large trees. And we know the large trees only, you know, the only effective way to remove large fuels is through, you know, a timber sale, really. That's the mechanism we have. So to get those fuels reduced, those large fuels reduced, we need that timber sale. Same thing with with planting. When you're trying to plant, if you don't want to plant in, you know, in order for it to be safe to the planters and to put that new stand in an area where you're not going to have tons and tons of large woody material, cover it up and then burn the next in 20 years, you need to deal with those large fuels. So certainly in order to accomplish those things, we need to have, as many of you have said, something that can be successful as a timber sale so that it can actually get done. And then we start to look at, so that's part of the where can it be successful? The other part of the where is what, what's the treatment itself going to look like? We know that we need to not just remove the large trees, we need to burn. And in order to burn effectively, we need to have blocks that we can burn. We also need to have burn blocks and fuel reductions in the best places on the landscape so that those future fires can, that we have a chance of controlling those large fires. So we're thinking about where the blocks are that we can burn, and we're thinking about, you know, which of those blocks are the most important to burn. And then we're thinking about, okay, do we have a lot of dead trees in that area? Do we have a lot of heavy fuels? And can we put together an economical sale, a viable sale, so that it can be done? There are places on the landscape that are that are really useful from a fuels perspective, but we can't get there. They're too steep. The roads are too, it's too far from a mill. It's, not the right species, things like that. So we've got a lot of land to work with, right? We've got on the Shasta T alone 130,000 acres. We know we're not going to be able to treat 130,000 acres. We might like to, but we're not going to be able to treat 130,000 acres, not with this effort. So we need to think about those smaller areas, the 5,000 to 10,000 acres that potentially we could put together in a focused EA to actually be successful. And so we're looking at places like Forest Glen. We're looking at places like the Texas Spider area, where the 30 and the 35 road come together, where they join in with the buckfire, the old buckfire, which was really instrumental in helping us control the spread of the fire northward. That buckfire scar was super useful. The fire didn't burn there. The August fire wasn't burning there because it had burned well. So we were able to anchor. Our fire lines through there. But it burned, and now you've got this burned up area that has these big trees that are going to make it harder to suppress fire in the future. Same thing with Forest Glen. Forest Glen was really hard to control fire, and now we've got more dead trees, more of a hazard, and it's potentially harder for firefighters to go in there. So those are some of the areas we're looking at, and we're trying to come up with something that meets a lot of goals, because we're not going to have a lot of opportunities to go back into this area and put together a viable sale. So we want those viable sales to be in places where we can do the most good for things like acres of regeneration and valuable fire control in the future. So it looks like Kristen wants to share something. So that was basically.
I raised my hand, but I'll wait to be called on.
Go ahead, Kristen.
Okay.
With I only see a few of you at a time, so with the document kind of on shared screen.
Okay. So this has been a really great conversation, and I definitely hear the message, which is we want to get going. And so what I would like to just bring to your attention is that this document before us is not the only effort and not the only work that has been going on and that is currently going on. There's a lot of work going on in the background that will set us up to move forward into our NEPA documents. For example, our wildlife staff is working very hard on getting the emergency consultation and the baseline consultation completed so that we can move into actual project specific consultation, which we can't do until we have those other efforts done. We have hydrology working and fisheries working on their baselines as well, so that we can easily pivot into getting a project out or multiple projects out. We have a lot of other overlapping interests where we're already doing work with the Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District, Cal OES. We have been working with our main timber operator, Trinity River, who has already been doing hazard tree reduction out there in those active sales. And additionally bear work as well, and the monies that are there to do that. So there's a lot of overlapping efforts that complement each other, and there's a lot of work going on in the background that you will see coalesce and come together when we get back after the holiday. We have meetings scheduled with forest staff early in January to take this document plus all these other efforts and work that we've been doing and strategize on the most efficient way to move forward. To answer a comment about funding, I currently have an agreement with NCRC, Larry Alexander's group, with my rat tail bucktail. Now that money, we have in that agreement for that still left over, about 300,000 in that agreement, and I'm working with Larry to modify that to change the footprint to be the entire district, so that I can take those specialists, soils, GIS, NEPA, everything that we include in that agreement, and shift it to the larger district and not just that footprint. I'm hoping to get a financial modification in there and put more money in there and shift that. So there's a lot of work that's going on behind the scenes that might not be readily apparent when we look at this document and have these conversations, but I want to assure you that it is happening. So thanks.
Thanks, Kristen. So Keith, you've put up a couple of comments on the chat. Maybe easier if you kind of just verbalize them to folks.
Well, yeah, I guess probably what would be helpful to the Forest Service would know to be able to know what folks see as points of opposition to what they proposed so far. If we have a problem with an area they focused on, or we don't like their marking guidelines, or once things get started, are we going to say, hey, that's not what we thought it was going to look like? I think we should help them identify those points of potential conflict ahead of time so that we don't end up being a roadblock to them getting something done.
Thanks, Keith. So how do we get there? I mean, I guess part of that is kind of like what Chris was describing, is a better understanding on our part of specific areas that are going to probably rise to the top as focal areas for doing work and what that work might be. And I don't know if that would be ready or be a little bit more well-developed by the time we meet in January.
Well, this is Keith again. I just think when you see a red area on the map in the zone of interest that's intensively burned, especially if it has good sight, we should expect that there's going to be some activities take place there that are going to be somewhat intensive in nature. And if we shouldn't be surprised by that as it goes forward, and hopefully we can encourage it, knowing that they've got an overall plan, not only for individual forests, but as a whole.
Gotcha. So other thoughts, folks? So I did also want to go ahead, Larry.
This is Larry Winter. I wanted to step back a little bit and look at the bigger picture and how this is affecting the program of work projects, specifically the Hind Pond project that's already gone through scoping. And it just seems like we've had these conversations about post-fire work numerous times already over the years that we've been in existence. And I really appreciate the work that's been put in to create this document. It really helps me to really get an idea what's ahead of us to do work on that burn. But there's probably going to be another burn next year and the year after. And we've done projects in past burns that have reburned. And so the bottleneck we've had was manpower and resources. And it just seems like the bigger these fires get, the more it stretches our resources and the more it slows down everything that we're trying to do to get ahead of these fires. And so if you can explain how this is going to affect other projects in the program of work and specifically the Hind Pond project, I'd appreciate that.
So I can respond to that maybe. Yeah, I can maybe respond for and Ted, and others as well. But you're exactly right, Larry. How do we not put all our eggs in the basket of post-fire activities and not do our get ahead work on on our green program? And so that's been a conversation we've been having at the regional level and at the zone level and at the forest level, where we recognize that the work to get ahead of this curve in terms of the effects we're seeing the fires have on all the things we value about the national forest is that other work that you described. Hind Pond's a great example. And so as we go forward with our decision around how much of this to take on, it's not going to be just this. It's going to be that plus all of the other work. We've got some great projects that are real close to the finish line on the west side of the forest, the pilot and Weaverville Community Forest. We're looking to have a strategy that doesn't slow the momentum on getting those over the finish line. And then a high improv project you mentioned is another great example of work we're wanting to continue. So we've got a real challenge in terms of trying to continue that other work and not sacrifice all that to focus all on the Saugus. So that's a great point, Larry. And I think we're doing our best to find that right balance.
Thank you, Scott.
And so Scott, can you give me timelines? Can you be more specific? The last I heard, because we did get funding for outside contracting NEPA project on the Hind Palm work to be done, and that, I first heard it was going to be 6 months, then it was 12 months before they can really get working here. And can you give an example of, or do you have an idea how, is it going to be pushed back even farther, or in your juggling of manpower, are you still going to be able to try to get, to continue doing some ongoing work here, even if it's not as fast as you'd like? What is your plan, if you have one yet, of how you are going to use that manpower that you have?
So I don't have exact timeframes for you yet, Larry. We're trying to figure this out in terms of that whole schedule and what resources and capacity. What we've been trying to do with Hind Palm, as you mentioned, is to get third-party resources available to continue that survey work that's necessary for us to get it, the NEPA done. With us just working through trying to figure this piece out and how it relates to the others, we're not going to have the answers to those questions until after the first of the year.
All right, thanks.
So other comments, other thought. I did want to mention to folks, we build this as a Zoom call from 10 to 11. It's now 11:20, but we seem to be having some pretty good conversation. So, and nobody seems to be dropping off. So we'll keep on going as long as folks want to, I guess. So any other thoughts, other comments on what Keith had to say or Larry had to say?
I'd like to kind of tie into something that Larry said, and that's that, the idea of the fires getting bigger and we're going to have these all the time. And that's true. But I think what I think most of us in Forest Service are trying to do is, leverage this opportunity. We have, a short window that we can, a window that we can have an a viable sale. But we also have the opportunity to use that sale to do a lot of other good work. So, maybe we have, a certain area that we can do a sale, but we can also burn, 2, 3, 4 times that area at the same time, because we're in the same watershed and because we're affecting the same, we're in the same owl cores and we're in the same watershed. So, hey, let's use that to do some good prescribed fire. Let's use that to do some planting at the right, density, so that we have those shaded field breaks in the future. So it's responding to the fire, but hopefully, if done right, we're going better. If we can do this right, we can bring ourselves to a place that's better than we were at before. So we're not just going to take this opportunity to get as close as in the areas we treat. We're not just going to try to get to 80% of where we were of where we were before. We're going to try to get to 200%, of where we were before. We're going to get to that. We want to get to that desired condition in those areas which we really weren't in the first place. And I know that that's not it's not Hind Palm because that's not where the fire was, thank God. But we're hoping that we can get to a better place than we were before the fire. And I think if this is successful, we will.
Great. Diana.
I was wondering, it seems that most of the airplanes are used in Southern California. Is there any way that we can get more use out of airplanes before it gets too big, and the smoke jumpers too? helitack and all that stuff. If we can get some more use out of that, so early on, initial attack. Thank you. Any comment on that?
Thanks, Diana. Scott?
Yes. You know, yeah, I totally agree. You know, I mean, we you know, we're getting off, you know, the kind of post fire stuff back to kind of the fire strategy, but you know, the whole focus on initial attack is to keep fires from getting big, because when fires get big, this is when they suck up the resources and prevent us from being able to respond to the others. So a ton of work is put in, and initial attack is always prioritized. You know, the use of aircraft is part of our regular run card, if you would, our planning for where fires come and what we do in response to that. And that'll continue to be. You know, oftentimes when these fires get bigger, our use of aircraft is we lose some of that based on some of the smoke conditions. But I would say that you're exactly right. We have aircraft capacity in the North State. We don't lose all that to the south. And so we look to use that extensively on initial attack. I will tell you, we're pretty excited. We're getting a renovation of the air tanker base in Reading to where we're going to be going to where I think we can have five simultaneous loadings of 5 aircraft, and so we're going to have better capacity in terms of retardant. But you know, no, I totally agree. Yeah, aircraft are essential for us, and early on the fire, the better.
Earlier the better. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Jerry. I wanted to comment on Keith's points. It reinforces the need for the communication of decisions being made. I mean, the paper that's been presented is a great conceptual document and a lot of work for sure, but there's no details, and details haven't been decided on. So in your question about opposition, I think that collaborative, everybody needs to know what decisions have been made so we know what we're talking about.
Or at least decisions being contemplated.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
So, and certainly I wanted to remind folks, especially Forest Service folks, that, you know, one large area of agreement, you know, and support from the collaborative will be projects that reflect the prescription in the fire kill to fuel break white paper. So to the extent that you can at least help us identify where you think you're going to use that prescription. And I know we charged the fuel break work group to kind of do an update of that and present it at the January meeting. But we've kind of talked about what those updates might include, some more flexibility and the width of the fuel break depending on conditions, that sort of thing. But that's certainly an area of known agreement.
Pat, we just completed the revision of that, and Kelly should have it. I wonder if you know, we're waiting for the final review, and that can go out sooner than later to everybody, so they've had read it. They will have.
That'd be good
for the January meeting.
Yeah, that would be good. Okay. So what else? So we kind of winding down here on a Friday.
Well, I can make another comment,
Joseph
Pat.
again. I'm just wondering,
Joseph,
Scott said he'd like indication of what the collaborative's recommendation was going to be even earlier than our January meeting. Is there any way that we can put together some sort of a concept to present to the collaborative that we're pretty sure would get approval, and so the Forest Service has some idea of where we're going? It seems like, you know, if we're going to wait until we have that meeting, I would think that the collaborative will agree with the revised fire kill to fuel break paper, but we haven't come to any recommendations for the Forest Service beyond that. Do we do that at the collaborative meeting, or do we need to come up with some strategy to coalesce around ideas ahead of time.
I mean, I'm certainly open to trying to help make it happen sooner. Scott.
So, I think while this has been individuals expressing their opinion, you guys have signaled enough of kind of what you're thinking and where your zones of agreement are that you've given us a good idea, of what you're thinking. Don't take on too much. Look at CEs as your primary vehicle. Look at hazard trees. Be focused on the roads. Be focused on the pilot prescription in terms of those roadside treatments. I'm hearing a little bit about where I think your conversations have been around adjustments to the paper. It sounds like likely you've talked about where there's opportunities to broaden from that 300 feet because it makes sense because of topography. I assume that's going to be in there. In my mind, you guys have done a great job giving us an indication of where your recommendation is going to be.
Okay. So Larry Winter, looked like you were about ready to say something.
Yeah, I was, and I agree with Joseph, but I was just wondering if we could have a two-pronged kind of approach to this. If the agencies can, a political approach to this, if the agencies can give us an indication or a list of how much manpower they need, that the collaborative should also be pushing for more manpower, more resources to get the work that we need to have done around here, as well as pushing for the work that needs to be done in the August fire. I wonder if we can, if this would be a timely thing to be doing that, asking for more resources, or should it wait for a later date? But it just seems like it's imperative to have any of this to be successful, that we need to have enough people doing this. I mean, I agree with Chris when he said that we need to leverage these opportunities post-fire to take advantage of what's available to do. But, we said the same thing in the 2015 fires here, and we have brush piles that have dead trees laying on top of them and brush growing back around them that haven't been burned yet. And so, it's one thing that we can say that we need to do these things right away, but manpower always kind of comes into play and defeats what our goal is that we're trying to achieve. And so I'm just wondering if we can have another prong, another approach.
I think certainly, Larry.
Push the political way.
And I was something I was going to ask Scott and Ted to help with also is I was thinking in the new year to kind of, it would be nice to, especially being as we're doing these meetings by Zoom, to extend an invitation to the regional office to join us on our next Zoom meeting. Maybe see if we can't get Barney Gant to join in if he's still the deputy, and we can talk to them directly. Ted.
Yeah, Barney's not going to be available, but yeah, we can definitely make the invite to the appropriate folks and see if we can get some participation. You bet.
Cool.
I'm happy to invite them.
Okay, great. So Terry.
So I just wanted to add the smoke jumpers. I used to be one, and the first initial attack is important, and they can increase their base there in Reading up to 40 men, and 2 planes can dump everybody on ahead of a fire, and they pinch it right off and stop it. We don't use it anymore in the wilderness because that's now it's okay to acceptable to let that burn, but giving them great consideration besides the Borate planes. They get out of the way. They know when they're coming in to help them. So that's a very good resource, and I was part of it. So giving them a yell out.
Thank you, Terry.
Welcome.
So Scott.
Yeah, a great tool, Terry. And I would just say that we put smoke jumpers in the wilderness all the time. We did that a bunch this year. We do a bunch of that every year.
Good.
So
Thank you.
Susan, Ross, you guys
Yeah.
kind of came, your picture showed up all of a sudden. You had something to, were you going to have something to add? Nope. Okay.
Wall.
Pat,
Yes, Arnold.
this time I have something to say, two things to say. One is, I think
Can you-
Scott did a good job listening to what we're discussing. One item we haven't discussed, so he didn't hear it, is that we're recommending, the fuel break work group is recommending relaxing our standard of no green foliage on any trees that get taken. So, and using instead the probability of mortality tables that the Forest Service already has. So
Good.
that would have the effect of making a lot of areas much more economical. And so you ought to be aware that that's in our mix that we're thinking about. The other
Great.
item I was going to, if in fact it would be useful to hear from us or for us to have a discussion earlier, I don't personally see why we couldn't consider moving, Scott even mentioned we might be a week late. I don't see why we can't consider moving the meeting earlier. Our meeting.
A regular meeting, we certainly can. I mean, there's nothing, we aren't bound by any law to have it in a particular time, just that people kind of get it on their calendar. But
And so
if
I think
folks thought,
you and perhaps Scott need to, and Forest Service in general, need to kind of assess how the Forest Service is coming along with their process and how certain we're feeling, but it seems like that could be useful.
yeah. And preemptively, what I was going to do is, even if we met on the 15th, our normal date, the Board of Supervisors meets on the 19th. So I was going to ask the county CAO's office to give us an agenda slot on the 19th, assuming that we'll have some sort of recommendation to make to them.
Good. That could have much of the same effect.
That might help a little. Now, recognize also, beginning the 1st of January, we have 3 brand new members of the Board of Supervisors who are pretty clueless to even what the collaborative is all about. Scott.
I hearing that your planned next collaborative meeting is the 15th, I think that's perfectly timed.
Okay.
I was thinking, there was another week later, but that had to do with getting it to the Board of Supervisors and getting, on their agenda and getting it back to us. So I think the 15th, and I looked at you, Ted, and Chris, and Kristen, to kind of concur that 15th looks like a great timing for us to share where we're thinking we're wanting to head, and for you to share, your zones of agreement with us, and have a great discussion then.
Okay. Great. So it's 11:30 and change. So I'm thinking we're running out the clock at this point. So anybody have anything to say who's been sitting there quietly listening?
Keith had a comment that he put into the chat, but
oh, okay.
It'd be better if we heard it from him, I think.
So Keith, do you want to mention your comment?
Really just thinking selfishly, but I think we might be in a little bit of a unique and envious position, and maybe I'm just ignorant on other areas, but having a pretty strong presence with a lot of expertise locally with the Watershed Center and the Trinity RCD. I think, I started looking at areas that I'm more concerned about because they're closer to me, and I think we could take some of those units and some of that manpower if those groups and their folks are willing and able to take on some of the work, if you will, of whether it's document writing, as we think there's a priority, or if it's resource evaluation. But it'd be up to those folks to be available.
Great. Thank you, Keith. Okay, any last, I want to go back to Tara. Did you have any closing things you want? Oh, I think I saw Dylan looking like he was wanting to say something.
I just want the group to know that, yeah, we've been heavily involved with the Forest Service through the process, and we'll continue to be there to help them.
Okay, thank you, Dylan. Tara, did you have any, or Chris, did you have any wrap-up kind of comments you wanted to make?
I just wanted to jump on really quickly and say, you know, I realize that this is the second time we've asked you to meet together quickly with very little heads up that it was coming. And I just really appreciate you guys all taking time out this close to the holidays and know everyone has a lot on their plate and just letting us know what you think. And you know, the purpose of this rapid assessment was to show you kind of what those opportunities are, what was in front of us, and then hear what you guys had to say. So we wanted to be transparent, show you what we had, what we put together, and get it shared with you so you could kind of know what was out there as well. But thank you all so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Great. Chris.
You know, just agree with that. Thanks everybody for agreeing to come to this meeting. I do still want to do a field visit, but we'll do it a little later. Thanks for all your input and your, you know, reviewing this in a short time.
Right.
A lot of work was put into this, and we appreciate you diving in.
Great. Scott or Ted, anything kind of closing?
Yeah, Scott asked me if I could cover for both of us. So, you know, yeah, just echoing what's been shared. I really appreciate everyone coming together. You know, frankly, we're going to be more successful the more we can work in conjunction and be in alignment with kind of what the collaborative and what we think we can do in the agency side. And just know that, you know, we're committed to working with you and being as transparent and rapid as we can. I know it's a big ask. Like I said, we're hoping to kind of get started and have our path forward in January so we can get the planning efforts going and be successful in getting there. So hear you loud and clear on kind of what your expectations and hopes are at this point, and just know that we're going to continue working with you and try to be successful together. So again, really appreciate it and your commitment to this important work.
Great. So I have one last thought. Kind of it's an old school kind of thought, considering we're doing all this Zooming and that sort of thing. But Tara, Chris, everybody, you might want to consider reaching out to the local newspapers to try to get some of this rapid assessment information and all the work that you've done out to people, you know, in the regular old fashioned paper and ink press, because not everybody in Trinity County is, you know, hep on Facebook and Twitter and other social media kind of ways of picking up information. So the newspaper, the Trinity Journal, certainly is an avenue that kind of old school gets it to people at their couches in their living rooms. So you might consider reaching out to them. And if there's ways that we can help do that, because, you know, your public information officers are booked up, RCD, Watershed Center have avenues for, you know, getting things in the paper that are a little more streamlined than some of you guys can do. So anyway, let us know. And with that, I want to thank everybody for giving up a good chunk of their morning to this really important discussion. And wish everybody a Merry Christmas. And I wish we'd done this live, because I could have shared the cans of Christmas cookies that are going to make me fat over the next couple of days. So anyway, and Kelly, thank you for hosting again.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas,
Merry
Larry.
Christmas.
And a Happy New Year.